We're now going to do a scaling shot. Scaling involves multiple passes that overlay and match but are of different sizes. This enables you to put small people on tables or film the 50-foot woman against the skyscraper, or even burn down the model skyscraper and make you think it's the real one. Scaling involves using the 3D precision of the Milo to enable you to know exactly where you are in space, to know exactly where the camera is in space, and if the camera is correctly set up and if the Milo is correctly set up and your nodal point is known to be in the correct position, then accurate scaling should fit straight on one pass on top of another, even though they're different sizes. We're going to be going through the setups and the action of doing the scaling. We're going to be filming our first master pass in a moment, and then we will film and create the scaled down shot in this case, and we will be putting the two together at the end so you see how they match. It'll only be rough, but this is merely to illustrate to you how to do it. Okay? The precision of our setups is vital to make this work. Scaling is not something you do on impulse when the director suddenly turns around to you and says, oh, let's do a scaling shot. No. You prepare for a scaling shot. You have to know how much you're coming down in size or going up in size. You have to know that you can film both parts of your scaling shot before you film anything. You have to know that you can focus that close with the lens you're using. You have to know that you're not going to knock over the set with your matte bar rods when you come up close to your set. You need to know that you're not going to go scraping the top of the table that you're filming on with your camera when you get that close. The greater the difference in scale that you use, the more accurate your measurements have to be in order to have things line up and match. It's possible to shift slightly your scaled shot when you are filming the slave part of the shot, but it's very risky to film your master shot, put it in the can, go somewhere else, set up and film your slave larger or smaller shot and assume that it's going to work. You're really playing with fire when you try doing something like that with scaling, and you're going to look like an idiot if it doesn't work. First of all, we're going to look at and see the master move which I have just programmed. It's a target tracking move, focus follows target, and I've called it Scaling Master Job. That was my master move. I've now filmed that. It's in the can as a beauty pass. I also had a bloop light start at the beginning of that move in order that we can line up our passes accurately. We're going to go to the Special Effects menu, one of which the pull downs is Scaling. And in my Scaling Special Effects menu, we're going to be doing a 2-point scaling. We're going to be measuring the set in our master move and measuring the set in our slave move. We're going to do this using large axes, and we're going to do this in order that Flare A knows where the set is in both conditions, and B knows how they are aligned to the rail. They needn't be aligned to each other. Okay, we're now going to shoot the talent on the master move. Mary's going to do the move for us, and so here we go. 3, 2, 1, shoot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and cut. In order to know how big our master set is, I have to measure it. And I'm going to measure it with the Milo using big axes. I'm in a position now where I'm looking at the corner of my set. I'm now going to store that position, and I'm going to take a measurement, which is my target distance, to that corner of my set. I'm now going to move my rig using large axes only. The precision with which we do this makes for a good shot. I'm now going to measure the target distance to that point and enter it in the second stored position for the master set. I've now entered the measurements that allow us to know where the master set is, how it is aligned to the rail, and how big it is. I've clicked apply on that so that this information will be saved as part of the job. Once I have this information, I can then go to my smaller set. We've now put our slave set in place. This is the set that we're going to be shooting our smaller version of the move into. We haven't put it in any special place. It doesn't need to be lined up with the previous set, but we do need to be able to measure the corners of the set in the same way as we did before. So I'm now going to go into my scaling screen, and I'm going to put in place my slave measurements. I'm looking at my first corner of my slave set there, so I'm going to store that position, and I'm now going to go out and take a measurement. And put that in as the target distance. And now I'm going to move the machine to look at the other corner. Again, I'm only using large axes. This enables me to more accurately spot exactly where the position is, so that Flair knows precisely where the corner is. That's my second corner. I'm going to store that position there and measure it. I now have a measurement of where and how big my slave set is. If I apply this data and exit from here, I can now go to my master move and switch to my slave move. Nothing changes on my screen, but if I look at my special effects scaling, I now have a scale. That scale figure has been worked out using the measurements I did of the master set and the slave set. Flair not only now knows the scale, it now knows where the slave set is. And as I am at the slave move, I can, if I wish, go and view on my rig model and play the slave move. That looks reasonably good to me. Let's look at what the move actually looks like as the slave move, an example. So we now have a workable slave move. We can now dress our slave set so that appropriate compositing can occur and put our talent in the correct place on the slave set at the right size. And here we go. 3, 2, 1, shooting. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we're able to take both those takes, the best ones of each, and do a composite of the two in order to create our final scaling shot. If we were to find that we didn't quite match on this, we would have the facility to adjust in X, Y, and Z our slave set in order to line things up. As you saw, we didn't have the slave move appear as the numbers on screen, but we were able to look at the slave move in the model view of the machine. If we really needed to see the slave move in terms of numbers, we would press that and convert the slave move into another master move. We would receive a warning to say that it may not be a perfect match. This slave move, the scaling screen, and the master move can now be saved again as whatever we want to call it. I called that Scaling Master 003, and that will now have the whole of the master, the slave, and the calculation screens fully included. This has been two-point scaling. In two-point scaling, we have a point and another point in the master set. They need not be any part of the job. They are separate points that define the size and position of the master set. We have two more points here that define the position and the size and the alignment of the slave set. They also need not be anything to do with the move itself. When you build a model, it's quite often the case that the set builders don't get the scale quite right. This system allows you to measure the scale exactly and come out with a scaling figure there that's calculated from the actual measurement of the sets you have. We can do one-point scaling. With one-point scaling, we only need 1 point to define where the master move is, and 1 point to define where the slave move is. Because we're only using 1 point, we assume that the master set and the slave set are aligned. But at the same time, we now have the capability to define a scale, because we can write into here whatever scaling figure we want, because we haven't defined a second point in order to say how big the master move or the slave move is. Because we are assuming that the slave move is aligned with the master move, we can not only align the slave move using X, Y, and Z, we can also align the slave move using azimuth, elevation, and roll. This means we can rotate the slave move around a vertical axis using azimuth degrees. We can rotate the slave move around a horizontal axis using the elevation, and we can rotate the slave move as a roll around the lens axis also in degrees. This means that if I wanted to, I could put 1 in the scale. I can rotate my slave set by 90 degrees and have people on the wall talking to people on the floor, or people walking up the stairs and people walking down the stairs, but the people walking down the stairs are horizontal. Or if I wish to put something like 180 degrees into one of these, I can have people on the floor talking to people on the ceiling. This is a very useful facility for special effects. This has been a Mark Roberts motion control training video. Thank you for watching.